Well, hello everybody. Once again, we're here on Gelvin Valley, trying to keep our fields ripped up. And it looks like I am creating a field, which kind of concerns me. Oh, it's not showing the help menu again. Give me just a second here. I don't know why that turns off. I want to make sure I'm not, oh yes, I want to limit the fields. Okay. And I created a little whoopee there, kind of in the field. Oh, I'm just trying to rip this up and get ready for another crop. We're in our largest field. I think I have them most of the way done, just a little bit, so probably by the end of this episode. Oh, there's a dandy boulder. We're going to have some rock work to do later. Picking all these up and rolling the small ones. Oops, I'm falling off of this hill. This actually is pretty steep in here. In real life, I'm not sure we'd be farming it, or if we were, I don't think we'd be ripping it up quite like this. We'd probably have it planted to grass or something that would keep the ground a little more stable than doing year after year arable farming. But whatever. Just a game, right? I'll take another loop around here. I guess it's getting kind of towards evening in game here. Good little tractor is pulling it up the hill like a good fella. Watching the sunset. Oh, I gotta be careful how I move the mouse so I don't cause vertigo for my good friend Atomic. That's a new word he taught me. I think in the last video I was chatting a little bit about the process of making a mod and comments on mentorship, comments on the work effort that it takes to do such a thing as mod, figure things out, and kind of as the episode was closing, I was talking about starting up a WIP project on these forums, like on FSUK. WIP project meaning work in progress, where a modder could showcase, if you will, his work, kind of what he was putting together. And by the way, I keep referring to it in the masculine. The reality is that ladies in farming sim tend to be few and far between. So I don't mean to offend anybody if they're listening to that. I'm being real. I think every modder I've ever met has been male. That's just kind of the way it is, I guess. We tend to gravitate to a game like this more so than the ladies, but I digress. So these WIP projects, could be set up where you could show your mod, show pictures or whatever, give updates, and then ideally, once your mod was released, you could lock the thread and basically indicate it was complete, provide a link to where the final version of the mod was, or that kind of thing. But in the meanwhile, kind of what I was talking about was, how forums can tend to attract people like trolls and negative energy and what have you. But I found that with a little bit of effort, if a person tried to learn something new and tried to do something, making a mod is a positive thing for the community. It's another, and it's all for free. Nobody has to pay for mods, or they sure shouldn't be paying for mods. I think that goes against the Giants' terms of service to do that, so no modder should ever charge for their work. So it's, yeah, for lack of a better term, it's a blessing to everybody else, when someone does the ad. And so maybe that's part of why people can get behind them and say, oh, that's a good idea, we'd like to see it. So whatever their motivation is, I found it really a positive experience to set up my own web thread and share a little about what I was trying to do. And I shouldn't do that. In real life, I would have just snapped all those tines to take it out of the ground before I back it up. I really want to change direction. I'm tired of going back and forth right here. But I gotta say, I think I mentioned in the last video, it is a lot of hard work learning how to mod the game. There's a lot of research involved. There's a lot of, I would say, discouragements. It can be discouragements because, anybody that's seen a few of the modding videos that I've put on here, one of my purposes for showing that, there's so many tutorial videos that are out there. But the videos I've shown, they're not tutorials at all. The ones that I've done a little bit of modding in there, they're not intended to be. There may be an answer to something by the time the video is done, but a lot of times it just shows what raw modding looks like. And what it looks like is a lot of trying this, trying that, because sometimes you just don't, or I don't, have answers on how to do something, so I have to poke the game here, poke it there, try to come at it from different angles to try to accomplish a particular objective. And so a lot of it sometimes, can maybe seem to be a little tedious or whatever. And sometimes it is. And I can't tell you the number of times, where something finally works and I'm like, oh, good, I can move on to something else finally, once we get something working. But in the middle of that, of discouragement or whatever you want to call it as you're trying to figure something out, it's so helpful, with these like a whip thread or something, or to have a few friends to bounce ideas off of. Just the encouragement, because I mean they're trying it on theirs and they know exactly what it feels like. And to have someone just come alongside and offer a kind word, encouragement to keep it going, even if their motive is that they want the mod that you're going to produce, and even if they don't even mean it. If they put it there, sometimes it can be just what you would call the shot in the arm, that you need, and that kind of keeps you going. And I think also that's another life lesson, being taught that even through a silly game, like this. I'm part of a small business, and being one of the owners, you can forget at a certain level where you were when you started working. And I don't know why that's a human tendency. We tend to think, well, everything I know and have in my head now, I've always had. Well, baloney. We all know we had to start somewhere. We all know we made mistakes, and depending on the nature of our job, and there might have been some really hard things we had to learn at some point in there, and we didn't get it all from day one. And sometimes it was that special person that went out of their way, and it may not have even been that much, where they took their time to just say, good job, keep trying, you're getting it, maybe instead of doing this, try doing it this way. And just those helpful people that you look back on and say, they were encouraging me and helping me, and I didn't even hardly realize, what they were doing at the time. And it just meant so much. So whether it's in a game like this, or I've tried to learn in business, I mean, it doesn't cost you anything to tell someone they're doing a good job. It can only help, right? I mean, if these people are working for you and they want to make sure they're pleasing you and earning their pay and all that, if you've got good employees, and we do, we have some awesome people, well then it's very helpful just to encourage them. And that's kind of what these whip threads were to me, and I really appreciated that. But I think I mentioned in the last video there was a downside to them. So I know I didn't have a whip thread when I did all of my modding. I did for a couple of them, but not all of them. I did one for the very first mod I did. I was just so tickled pink. And I didn't set one up until I had a little bit of success. You know, I'll never forget how I felt the very first time, when I took a tractor and a cultivator out in the field and watched a rock show up behind it. We've seen through these past few episodes, we've seen several rocks just kind of burp out from underneath this chisel plow, and anymore it's no big deal. But at the beginning, I can't tell you how hard I worked just to get that to happen the very first time, and it was just a thrill. And I guess anytime you're thrilled about something, you want to share it with other people, and some of them may not care, but some of them do. And so it was like in the middle of the night when I saw it working, and I was like pounding my fist in the air because I was just so tickled pink. And then, even though it was probably about 3 a.m. or whatever it was, some unearthly hour, I decided to start up a whip thread. What I didn't know at the time is just how much work there still was ahead to get it to be kind of a viable mod. I think the version that I had that finally worked a little bit in game, it probably was, let's say, maybe 150 lines of code. I don't remember exactly, but the final version had at least double, if not triple that, and another couple Lua files. I had to write one for the Object X. That was probably over 100 lines. And then another one to put it in as a specialization on all plows and cultivators in game. That one was mainly written by someone else, but I still had to have that in there. Suffice it to say, I had no idea. I was very naive. Didn't know how much work there was still to do. But I started it anyway. And oh yeah, kind of when I was starting this was the downside. I would say, if there is one, is the pressure that I felt. It's like, okay, pal, you stuck your neck out and you showed all these people what you're working on, and they've given you encouragement. They want you to succeed. Well, you now have to succeed. You had better pony up with a mod by the time you're done with all this, or you've just wasted all these people's time, wasted your own time. You would disappoint people, and maybe not everybody's going to internalize it quite that way. That's kind of how I felt about it, and so it added a little more pressure to doing it than maybe I would have liked. So, but I did it again later too. But I did it a little bit differently. The next time that I had one, I think I did more work before I set up my whip thread. So I got through a good share of the testing and whatnot, and then I showed some pictures, what I've been working on, what I've been doing, and it was very close to being released. So that seemed to be a little less pressure to do it that way, and people didn't have to wait so long. I remember one person telling me, and fortunately he didn't leave a post on this, or he didn't send me a direct message and tell me this. He told me this after all of it had been done. He just told me, he says, I thought you were crazy. He says he apparently knew a little bit of coding experience, and he said when he saw what I wanted to do, and that I freely admitted I had no experience, no knowledge or whatever, he said, I thought you were crazy and nothing would ever happen with it. Well, he was, like I say, nice enough not to say that to me in there, because that would have discouraged me. But I just thought that was, kind of interesting seeing that kind of later. quite a journey, even on the web threads, and people had ideas too. A lot of times on the forum, for some reason, it was a big no-no, a big faux pas, if you will, if anybody was to say, have a thread that had mod ideas, or if they would come across as, hey, I think this would make a good mod, would someone make it for me, please? Oh my. If anybody ever posted something on that, and people periodically did, there would be all kinds of people coming out of the woodwork to basically body slam the person who dared to make such a thread. And I never really felt that way towards those people. Um, I always think ideas are great, to just lay out there and put out there. And what does it hurt if someone asks? They can put that out there. That doesn't mean someone has to do it. I think the intent or the reason they didn't want those questions kind of coming on the forum was, that they could irritate modders or whatever. And well, I'm not a major modder by any means, so nobody ever really did much of this to me. I suppose where it could get annoying is, if they're sending you direct messages begging for something, and you can't get them to leave you alone. I could see where that could be a problem, but then again, I think there also were mechanisms on the forum to block people so they couldn't contact you anymore, or some of those kinds of things, if you were being harassed. But to just lay ideas out there and put them in the public, put them into the public, I didn't see any harm in that. And like I say, if someone wanted to make it, they could. If you didn't, well, no harm, no foul, as they say. But still, the idea was out there. But yeah, a lot of times in setting up a whip, as you're working on it, there'd be people who would throw in ideas of, here's something you could think of doing, and again, you didn't have to take their suggestions, but I know, like on this, for this here, like you see, where is it? For that's great. Okay, there it is at the bottom. That little slash with the see this here, this rock digging level 3. There's 5 levels, and actually 6. The 6th level is it turns off. But there's 5 different levels of digging. Level 1 is very low. You're not going to have that many rocks at all. And then level 5 is very high, and you'll have a bunch of rocks come up, but we're kind of on the middle. Well, that was someone's idea on the forum in the whip thread, where they suggested it would be good to have different levels, the ability to turn it off, and some of those kinds of things. So, I knew at one point I did want an off button, if you will. If you got tired of picking up rocks, you could just turn it off and just cultivate or plow like normal. But then I didn't know or couldn't conceive of what necessarily to do for when it was on. Whether there'd be a lot of rocks that would come out, how much was too many, how, just what was the right amount to come out. And I don't know if I got it right. I eventually landed on a certain amount, and it is what it is. And anybody that knows how to do a little tweaking of a lure could easily make, you could have a boatload of rocks pouring out of here if you wanted, or even less. Or you could even add your own kind of rocks if you wanted. But I just found all that interaction helpful, and it was a way even for me to document my own progress on it. And when FSUK ultimately closed, I did go save those posts, and it's been a while since I've looked at them. I don't know that I'll bore anybody with a video on it, unless someone really is interested in it, I suppose. But I may go look at it at some point, just for the sake of nostalgia. But part of it too, when you go through the experience of learning to mod and looking for information, looking hard for information from whatever source you can find it, and knowing that that information is hard to come by, a lot of times. That was another purpose I had for the whip thread, is just shared learning. If I learned something, I would try to write it down in there so that if others were searching or needed to know how to do something, well, then maybe some little thing I learned, would help them out in some way. So, all in all, like I say, a wonderful experience, but maybe in moderation, like I say, depending on your temperament. Some people really enjoy communicating a lot, and the idea of performance on what they've said they're going to do, if that doesn't bother them, well, then knock yourself out. But I think in the future, if I set up a group, it'll be more towards the end. And I can't do it on FSUK anyways, it's closed. But there are a few other forums still out there, not heavily trafficked. One of them, I think, is American Eagles. Oh, let's see, I think there was a modhoster.com. They may have had one, they may still have one. And there's various other, for other nations. You may need Google Translate to kind of help you out, depending on where you go. And on that, that's kind of funny. One of the places I spent a little bit of time on, kind of as FSUK was winding up, and I was trying to figure out where to go. Then the whole world kind of opened up into Discord groups and channels, and so it isn't a forum anymore. It's more on Discord and other types of social media. But one group that I spent a little bit of time on, it's called Modding World, and I think it's German, as I recall. And I think I mentioned in a previous video that one of the things my mentor asked me to do, or encouraged me to do, as a means of learning, if nothing else, was to try to help other people fix their problems. And so I did a ton of that on FSUK, just trying to take on whatever question people would ask and see if I could figure out a way to fix it. And just to try to learn. And I did a little bit of this in Modding Well, and it was doubly challenging because, even though I have my heritage is Swiss, maybe a little bit of German. I think it's similar to German. I don't know a lick of German, so when I go on there, even to read the question, I'd have to use Google Translate, no big deal. But then when I would try to solve a problem or answer a question, I'd have to leave the answer in German. I mean, I could have left it in English, but, well, yeah, we maybe don't need to talk too much about that. I don't know if Americans have a reputation of doing that in places and just leaving English and expecting people to just understand. I know there's lots of people around the world that understand English because maybe they have to, but I'm sure if you're German, you would prefer to see things in your native tongue. So I just chose to do that. If I answered a few questions on Modding World, I ran it through Google Translate, to make sure I was trying at least to put it in their mother tongue. And I would just tell them flat out, hey, this is I don't know German. This is Google Translate. Forgive me if something doesn't come out right. I think I've told a story before in here of getting to know some Russians, and you never know what can get lost or added in translation. Sometimes even some bad words, and which can be kind of amusing at times. But I talked to someone over there, I know at one point, who, what I always tried to do with Google Translate, by the way, I mean, this added just a ton of time sometimes, but if I was answering a question or trying to send a message to someone in German, I'd start with English, of course, on the left. It would translate what I was saying into German on the right. Well, then I would set up Google Translate again, and I would take everything in German from the translation that I did, and then I would try to translate it back into English, and I would see what it said. And I figured if it came out the far end in English saying what I wanted to say, then hopefully the translation was okay. And I remember talking to someone at some point who knew German and knew English very well, and I just asked him, I said, here's kind of what I'm doing. I'm trying as best I can. and he basically told me that my German was very, very good, which I thought was very funny. Because, like I say, I don't know any German at all. So Google Translate is pretty handy for that. And not only that, that's another something I felt pretty strong about, when making a mod. I think the Giants, oh, what is it officially? Maybe they've changed it on it, but if you submit a mod to the Giants, I think they want you to have translated it into a few different languages. And I'm not sure which ones those are. It could be it's English, German, French, and Spanish, maybe. I seem to recall it's mainly 4 languages. But the game itself will actually support more like 10 to 15 languages, I think, all said. So, so when I made this, I mean, if anybody ever opens it up, I tried to cover all of the languages that the Giants works with. So, and that takes a ton of time. And most of it was all through Google Translate. I had a few friends, um, like one that I knew at the time who knew French. Well, I still know him. He's still a friend of mine. Um, my mentor could do Swedish, although I don't think that that's a language that the game uses. I still put him in there anyways, just out of respect for him. I gave him the tags and put him in. But Japanese, Chinese, actually 2 different versions of Chinese, as I recall. Portuguese, just all the major languages of the world. I tried to put everything in there. So, like, on this F1 menu, where it says at the bottom there, rock digging, level 3, medium, or whatever. Well, all of those words had to be translated into other languages, when the mod description file was set up. So just one more thing to do, as you're working through a mod and making all the pieces that makes up whatever it is. So, like I said in another video, I tend to be a little forgiving of people when they release a mod and it isn't quite finished. It's maybe popping some errors, or maybe doesn't even work at all. Maybe what happened is they threw their hands up because they ran out of time, and they said, I'm just going to send it out there and someone else can work on it if they want to improve it. Some of them will flat out be honest and tell you that. They say, hey, I know it's popping errors. They might even tell you what those errors are, and just basically leave it in someone else's hands to work on. Kind of like the little combine, we worked on here that we used in this, but I think slowly but surely we're trying to iron more errors out of it and add more features, that it should have had. And so, knowing how much work that is, maybe the last thing a person wants to do if they're getting tired of a mod is to make a whole bunch of translations. I mean, it does take a lot of time. And if you do it too early in the process, well, and you then later change, some of those commands or whatever, then you gotta totally redo all that. So it just takes more time. Well, look at that. We got another field. So there was the Lua coating, there was a little XML coating, the mod description folder. Actually, let me see, how many of I better check the map here. Give me just a second. So, well, look at that. I think I've come full circle. So I have 1, 2, 8, 37, and 38. Folks, we are charging right through. So I'm just going to head down the hill and continue on. But the other thing we notice, with this pond here, is the rock objects. And so, just like learning Lua, a little bit of Lua coding was something different. Learning how to deal with 3D objects was also in script things. And I think I've mentioned before, I don't know how to use 3D modeling software. Probably if I ever do learn, one of the first things I'll try to make is probably a rock, of all things. I can turn it here, right? Sometimes I forget what road I'm on. Is that poison? So one of the things I started doing was looking for rock objects. Some came from the Giants map. One modder offered to make me a few, so he did, and then some I got online. There's these places where you can find free 3D objects, and I felt it was important to try to get permissions, and I've learned a little about Creative Commons license and all that jazz. Still can't say that I know it perfectly or whatever, but I tried to learn a little bit as to what kind of attribution or credit was needed. And I've tried to give credit where credit is due, because none of these rock objects that this thing is spitting out, I can't take credit for any of it. I didn't do it. So other artists made those. And I remember some other guy that I met, what was his name? Tyrone? Oh, now I'm curious. Let me see if I can get this. I know I have a mod. Is it in miscellaneous? Placement of rocks? Oh, I must not have the placeable rocks in here. Bad. But yeah, his name is on these rocks in the credit. He made several of them, and I happened to catch him over there. I don't even remember what website it was that had those, and he very kindly let me use them in the game. I explained what it was, what I was using them for, tried to estimate what kind of reach it would have. Not that I can tell. I mean, it's not that many people that are interested in fussing with rocks. But he told me he was just glad that someone was going to use them, after he spent time and effort to make them. And I think a lot of artists that happens to, they hang their stuff out on these websites, and yeah, hardly anybody ever gives them a look. But there's some cool things out there if you look for them. And so I didn't know how to make my own, so I found enough rocks, and then it was a matter of putting them into, getting them into the Giants editor. And obviously the format on these other 3D objects could be a variety of formats. So some of them I had to literally, while I didn't know how to use Blender, I still had to use Blender a little. Where I would get these objects, take them into Blender, I wouldn't do anything with them. I would get them in there, and then I would export them using a special i3D file exporter. That's kind of what the format is for the Giants editor. And then once I had them in the Giants editor, then I can manipulate them further to make them do what I needed to have them do as rocks, kind of in the game. Just one more thing to learn and be exposed to, and with a 3D object, what you start then running into or learning or having to learn is all these different physics terms. And it's kind of like, one of these videos in here, I think I showed a little portion, a little snippet of a script that I wrote to help the hay bales stay on the hill. Because them suckers will just roll down the hill, the slide is slow, and I know they can do that in real life sometimes. But more often than not, they're way more solid to the hill than they tend to be in this game, so I wanted to make them stay put. So some of the terms or some of the commands used in the game engine to do that are actually, what I believe to be physics terms, whether it's related to friction or, what was it called? Static dampening, angular dampening. I don't remember even what some of those terms mean anymore, but there are a lot of attributes in the Giants editor that apply to 3D objects that you kind of have to learn because, you know, if you're going to do something in that editor, you need to know the impact of what it is. And so there's ways, for example, you can change the mass of an object, you know, make it heavier. So one of the things that'll dig up periodically in this RockSpawn mod is a gold object. I don't know how infrequent it is. I think it's very rare. But if you do dig up a gold object in the field, you'll get several thousand for it, I think, when you turn it in. So it's quite a bit of money. But anyway, on the i3D file in the object in the editor, I made the gold quite a bit heavier than regular rock. I have no idea if it's anywhere near something realistic, but I tried to make, you know, a difference. So all these things to learn, and you know, if you're making a mod, nobody's going to do it for you, by and large. They'll help you, but nobody's going to do it for you. So there's a lot of bone-wearying hours spent figuring it out, putting it together, and that could be a reason why sometimes you'll see a mod, you know, that you may see in a video such as this or some other one, and you'll say, well, why don't they release it? Well, part of it is they don't want to go through the pain of making it and going through all the testing and doing everything they know they need to do to release a quality mod. You know, it's kind of like, I think I've mentioned in game here, I modified the Sky Swap mod, which was a Farm Sim 17 mod, and I took it backwards so that we could use it in 15. Well, it would take a lot of work to release it for 15, and nobody's going to care. I mean, maybe there's a few people out there that would get it, but not that many. And I don't even want to think about the amount of work it would take, you know, to get it, you know, to where I feel it needs to be before it can be released. So, yeah, just one of those things. I better check the time because I have a feeling I am long over. Oh, look at that. I'm in here at 40 minutes. Well, once again, I think I've rattled on enough here. Thank you, anyone who's listened to this. I appreciate you stopping by. We're slowly but surely getting to the end of tilling our fields, and hopefully we'll be done soon and get the next crop planted and be on our way. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye for now.